bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's January 10th. It's a Friday. It's the last day before training camps open in MLS, at least some of them. We'll have some open this weekend. Atlanta United will be underway on Monday, and I'll be there covering that with both SDH and 92.9 The Game. We won't have a normal show on Monday. It'll probably end up being like a series of drops. So be checking the app. Make sure your podcatchers are all subscribed to Soccer Down here, and we'll try to give you a heads up when we hop on and chat for a bit. Try to give you a heads up on Twitter, so make sure you're following at Soccer Down here at Longshoe. It is a Freestyle Friday, which is kind of a new thing. I think it'll come up from time to time. Basically, whatever you want to ask, wherever your questions are heading into 2019, let us know. And there's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of different kinds of questions. So everything's fair game. Let's chat about the upcoming 2020 season. And shoot your questions to us on Twitter at Soccer Down here. John is not in the metro Atlanta area. He is in Tifton?
Check.
Okay. How's Tifton?
Sunny and getting kind of thick pretty quick.
Getting kind of thick pretty quick. Do you want to translate for people who have no idea what you're talking about?
Kind of hot and steamy.
Hot and steamy? It's January 10th.
I'm aware.
What?
Yeah, it's supposed to be in the high 70s today down here.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe that would classify as an adios mio from you.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all, but just smile and nod and move on. And you're not supposed to be talking about things being thick in January in Georgia.
Humid.
Even in southern Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Temperate, humid, and I'm glad that I have packed multiple shirts. Let's put it that way.
Okay, it's not that hot. Stop. It's not July.
But if you have humidity and all this kind of stuff, anything is possible. So I have packed appropriately. Hopefully not actually. And can get out of here, but no, down here to catch up with some friends, and then turning around and coming back to Atlanta, and then next week is Beach Week, and that is anniversary week for the marriage to the boss, and so my reports will be from St. George Island, Florida, next week in Apalachicola, but we will be doing the show as normal. Not bad
at all. We won't be doing it Monday because I'll be hanging out in Marietta. You'll be hanging out on a beach.
In the rain. It's supposed to rain all week.
Oh, well, that's not good.
Yeah, that's a no bueno. And, of course, taking my golf clubs, hoping for a round or two, and all I have seen is rain in the forecast. So congratulations to me.
Yeah, good luck with that. Don't get hit by lightning.
No.
Ball out of the puddles, all those kinds of things.
No, there will be no Caddyshack moments with a priest. There'll be none of that stuff. No, that we will be indoors. If there's any kind of rain, we'll be indoors and just staring at angry seas.
Okay. Well, hopefully they're not too angry, and hopefully you get some kind of reprieve from the rain at some point. What does our Twitter timeline look like on a Freestyle Friday?
Well, going back to one of the signings that happened yesterday, Chris Ashley, in seeing a photo, said, "Peep that new MLS font."
Yeah, let's start there. So this is from the Cincinnati signing of a player we've talked about this week, Yuya Kubo, from Ghent in Belgium, 26-year-old Japanese striker. Played a little bit as a second forward. He's played some on the left wing. I don't know if they meant to. Well, they meant to do it. I don't know if they were supposed to do it because this new typeface, font, what have you, was mentioned in the Fashion Week stuff. But Cincinnati either ran out of the old font or didn't want to mislead people or just said, you know what, we're going to drop this, or maybe this is part of MLS's grand strategy. I don't know. I like it. It's cool. It's different. I want to see more of it in some of the different colors, and especially some of the kits that are a little bit more difficult to pick out the color on the kit of the name and number. And Atlanta might be one of those again with the secondary kit, so we'll have to wait and see. But it looks good in the picture. I like it.
Yeah, I'm digging it, and I like. I'm one of the guys that like the 3 stripes on the shoulder as a part of the original release for the 25th anniversary
I like
stuff.
the 3 stripes on the shoulder. The idea that it's tied to the 25th anniversary is a little thin. Not buying that. I think that's kind of a silly gimmick, but just the idea of the 3 stripes on the shoulder as a throwback, cool, dig it.
Tafka this morning, or yesterday, during the draft, said Robbie Robinson needs to learn to smile and learn to sound excited. Yeesh, ha-ha.
I think he was nervous. I think he was really nervous. Let's talk about the draft just as a whole for a little bit. So they did a very different style of draft. I don't think any league has done any kind of a production like this. I like that they tried to do something different with it. I do. Was all of the execution on point? No, it wasn't. It's a live event. I mean, how many times in a ballroom have we seen things go haywire? Pretty much every draft. And this is including the big boys too. Like, this is an NFL draft. This is an NBA draft. It happens. Things happen. When you get creative with your production, they might happen more often. And they did at times here. I thought it was fun. And look, this draft, it's not... Which draft is more meaningful to you? What is the most meaningful draft in professional sports to you? Is it the NBA or the NFL?
NFL.
NFL? Why NFL?
Well, because you're dealing with teams that are having to fill more spots than the NBA. So by nature, you're still spending astronomical amounts of money in signing these individuals, but you're having to fill 53-man rosters as opposed to 13.
See, I could argue the NBA is bigger because they add that lottery element to it. You get an extra bounce of excitement around your draft, and you separate it out a little bit. That makes it a little more unique. The NFL has stretched what was a one-day marathon to 2 days, and is it now 3 or is it actually 4?
I think it's 3, and the third day goes forever.
Yeah, I think it's 3. I think it's first round all one day, and then second and third, and then everything else.
That's either second or third or 2, 3, 4, and then everything else.
Okay. So they've seen that, look, we can stretch all this out because it's a property. We can do a lot of things with it. NBA has created that lottery element to it. They do a lot of things with their draft. The second round of the NBA draft isn't all that meaningful.
And so that's the other reason that I pulled the NFL was because, it used to be the NBA draft used to be 7 rounds, and you could bring in a Harry Kelly from Texas Southern who led the NCAA in scoring, and you could pick him in the 5th round.
Well, you could pick him, but he never actually made it to your team.
No, just
You're
ask
just
the Atlanta
picking a name
Hawks.
on a sheet of paper.
Yeah, but for me, you're looking at the depth pieces and filling something out where the NBA just decided, okay, 2 rounds and we're done.
Okay, but both of those, for the most part, throughout and again, NFL rosters are much bigger, but let's just talk 1 round. Most of those, you're going to get a first-round pick that's going to be impactful in their rookie year. That's not the case in the MLS SuperDraft. It's just not. That's changed a lot in the last few years. So I saw a lot of people saying that this production style, the way they did this, it diminished the importance of it. The draft isn't important. And that's not to diminish the players who are being picked, the opportunities that they're going to get. Not at all. But let's be real here. You're going to have very few players that were picked yesterday in the first round that are going to end up starting double-digit games in MLS in 2020. It's just not really going to happen. So if you sell the draft as this big, transformational, important thing, and then it's not, that doesn't work. So I think they found a new idea of doing it. I think there's still wrinkles in it, and they'll get those, but make it fun, do some different things with it. It was very cool that instead of some of these guys who are getting picked, and this could be the highlight of their soccer career. So instead of sending these guys to a ballroom and maybe parents go with them or maybe a youth coach goes with them, they get to be at home and with as many people as they can fit into their room or house or wherever they are. That's pretty cool. The Nashville pick, that whole thing was very cool. I loved it. Very different. Reportedly, the player and the people that were at the house had no idea that he was about to get picked and that there was a bus of Nashville fans outside.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. It's so different. You can't replicate that in the other sports, so take advantage of it. Little things to work through. I mean, if you're going to have David Beckham make a call to his first pick, make sure he's got a stable connection, please. That didn't work so well. But these things happen. I think finding the right tone, too, and I thought Matt Doyle and Taylor Twellman and Adrian Healy did a really good job with this because it's a tough one to talk about. Because, yes, you're going to have these situations where you're drafting a player who, as Doyle pointed out consistently, they're going to play for the second team. Like, he's picked by the Red Bulls. He's going to play for Red Bulls 2 next season. And that's okay. I mean, that's fine. I don't know what baseball does with their draft anymore, but maybe it's the most comparable to this, where you're going to see a lot of guys picked that you probably aren't going to see with that team anytime soon. Yeah. You're going to see them in the minors.
Yeah, I think that's about right, because short of that absolute top 5, maybe top 10, if it's a stretch stud that will get that quick cup of coffee just to get acclimated to pitching and then breeze his way through the system, maybe starting in, Double-A, trend doing quick room in Double-A. If he hits 350, they move him up after a couple of weeks, goes to Triple-A, crushes it in Triple-A, and moves up to the majors. No, that's you're going to be in the minors for at least a year, if not 2, depending on your level of development when it comes to the baseball section of it.
Yeah, and I don't know how they produce it and talk about it, but I think that's understood, and that's okay. And that's what needs to be the conversation here, is that when a player's picked in the MLS SuperDraft, the expectation is not that they walk into a starting lineup day one. If that happens, it's rare. If they play a lot year one, it's rare. It's far more likely they're either going to go out on loan if that team doesn't have a second team in-house, or they're going to play for the second team for the majority of the first year. And they're going to have to show enough to earn another shot and earn another contract. So that's okay. And I thought that Doyle and Twellman tried to balance that without being unfair to the athletes. But I think once the idea is just understood, like, hey, this is more of a prospect kind of draft than a draft that's going to make a big impact on a team in the following season, that conversation's easier to have. Then it's just more expected. So I thought it was a really good reimagining of what the draft process can look like for MLS. There's no need to ship everybody off to a combine and then to ship everybody off to a ballroom to do this, especially with the season starting earlier and earlier and training camp starting earlier and earlier. This is a nice first step into what the new version of the MLS SuperDraft can be. It's drafting prospects. It's drafting guys to give them an opportunity to try to stick. Now, Atlanta United and their pick, what did you think about it, John?
I thought that it was filling a need at the back with depth and hopefully the possibility that he could develop, knowing that he's going to be spending time with Atlanta United too. You're looking at someone who can hopefully help you out down the line, and I was down with this.
Well, and again, I don't think he's going to be necessarily depth day one.
No.
I think he's going to have an opportunity, and this was something that Carlos Bocanegra talked about yesterday when he spoke to the media on a conference call. Atlanta United had a college combine in December. They brought guys in that they thought would be available where they were going to draft, and they took a look at them. These players got a chance to be at the training ground, see how Atlanta United works. This was one of the guys who impressed. He's a left-footed center back, Patrick Nielsen. He was high on their draft board, so they already knew him. They already liked him. They already felt like he was a fit personality-wise. And Bocanegra said he's going to go into preseason with the first team, and he's going to have an opportunity to prove himself. But having Atlanta United 2 means that he can still train with the first team week in, week out, if he earns that contract, because he's got to earn a contract. And that's something that I think a lot of people misunderstand about the SuperDraft. Outside of the Generation Adidas players and a small handful of college seniors who MLS signs to contracts ahead of the draft, these guys have to earn that contract. And we will see if Patrick Nielsen can do that. Interesting trajectory from Nielsen. One, he's got a lot of similarities to Julian Gressel. He came through an academy system in Europe. He's Danish, so he played in their academy system, played in their league system, didn't get to that next level, had the opportunity to come to the United States and go to college. Went to the University of Cincinnati initially before transferring to Michigan State. First year at Michigan State, all Big Ten first team. Second team this past year. Big reason why is he missed the first 7 matches of the season due to injury. 2018, Michigan State went to the semifinals of the NCAA tournament. They struggled a lot more in 2019. It was a slow start, and not having Nielsen was a big part of that. Their head coach talked about his presence, and that was a big part of it. That's something that pro teams like to hear, is this is not just a guy who's, kind of there, kind of invisible, good player, but doesn't really have that presence. Nielsen has that. So he's going to get an opportunity. You do have openings for depth at center back, but I think the majority of his playing time early on is going to be with the twos. And that's fine. But he's going to have that opportunity to start in preseason with the team and see where he gets.
Yeah, for me, unless something absolutely happens in training camp that we're not anticipating, I had my eyes on Nielsen being with Atlanta United 2, getting reps, trying to prove himself and figure out where he may fit in the system, spending the season at fifth third and working on his game there. And if it just so happens that you catch lightning in a bottle and you have something like we've had players in the past with Atlanta United 2 where they might get a cup of coffee at the end of the year with the first team, so be it. But once again, I wasn't having any illusion off the top that Nielsen was going to be a part of Atlanta United's first team roster.
I think the other element that people need to keep in mind with Atlanta United 2 specifically is those players who are playing with the twos have the opportunity to train with the first team all week. Usually it might be the last training session before the weekend's match. I think this is also something people need to keep in mind about Atlanta United 2 as a whole, because it's not a normal team. It's a reserve team. It's guys who are not going to factor into that weekend's first team match who are available, along with guys who are on USL contracts. So it's not an easy comparison to a Birmingham, a Memphis, a Charleston, etc., because those are teams that train and function like a normal team. This is a reserve team. This is a team that lineup's going to look different every day. You're going to have certain guys who need to play because they need to stay sharp. They're coming back from injury, what have you. But you're going to have guys like Nielsen who might have most of their training with the first team group, but come over and play with the second team. I could see Nielsen and Campbell being a duo that plays a lot together with Atlanta United too.
Right.
That's going to depend on what else is signed with Atlanta United's first team. And we'll get to that because Carlos Bocanegra talked about it yesterday. He said there's 3 to 4 signings that are basically on deck, and they're hoping to get done in the next week. He did say that things have been a little bit slower than they'd like, but they feel like they have plenty of time to get these things done ahead of CONCACAF, ahead of the MLS season starting. So we don't know if one of those signings was the one they announced almost immediately after the conference call. Anton Walkes is back. Walkes was a key figure in 2017, second half of the season especially, started the majority of his games in that second half at right back. Was on loan from Tottenham. Loan was not extended. He went back to Tottenham after the MLS season, and then they loaned him to Portsmouth for the first half of 2018, the second half of that European season. Transferred him permanently to Portsmouth ahead of the 2018-19 season. He's played a good bit for Pompey. It's been interesting to get some of the reactions from Portsmouth fans who some are positive, some are negative. Yep. Some say that he didn't do anything for them. He played everywhere for them, first off, and his versatility, I think, is what makes him attractive to Atlanta United. The fact that he was a good locker room presence, he was a good guy to have in the team, good teammate, that helps a ton. Obviously, the fact that he knows the league, it's an easy transition. But I think the number one thing is that you're talking about a player who played in 2017 at right back for Atlanta United, came up as a center back / defensive midfielder through Tottenham's system, has played left back for Portsmouth, along with center back and right back and defensive midfield. Another versatile piece who can be a reserve in a number of roles. I don't think he's coming here to be a starter. I think he's coming here to be available when needed and in a variety of spots. That's important because if you look at the guys in this team that have either been rumored or are here or were brought back this year, Jeff Larentowicz can play in the holding midfield center back. Brooks Lennon can play anywhere along the right side. Emerson Hyndman can play anything in the central midfield. Walkes anywhere on the back line and defensive midfield. Meza, who's been rumored, can play center back, right back, defensive midfield. You've got a lot of versatility in this group, and that's going to allow this team to play 3-5-2 when the time calls for it, 3-4-3 when the time calls for it, 4-3-3 when the time calls for it, and any variations of those. That's a good situation to be in. And when you're able to get a reserve who knows your club and by all accounts loved his time in Atlanta, you're in a good spot. It's a good get.
A couple of folks have commented on the timeline this morning, and Matt Wagner was right along with your intro with Anton Walkes. He says, with respect to Carlos Bocanegra's comments about signing 4 more players, was that after the Walkes announcement was made? Sounds like it's based on the needs he outlined. Also, his comments on Gressel didn't sound promising. # we need more.
We need more what? We need more information.
Players.
We need more players.
I don't know, but I'm guessing Matt wants more players.
Yeah, I've already seen the questions. We'll get to how tenuous it is to even be able to field a team. We'll get to that as we go this morning. But the statement was made before the Walkes signing was announced. I don't know if it was made with the idea that was coming or not. No way to know. I'm not in Carlos's head. So that's all I know in that regard. The Gressel comments, he said that conversations were going on internally. He did, in a separate question, talk about the CBA and how they don't really have any direction on where that's going to go just yet. We've seen Garth Lagerwey in Seattle talk about it, how that's had a very negative effect on Seattle's recruitment and signings going into preseason. Seattle feels like the one that either is the most conservative about what the effects of the CBA could be, or is using that as an excuse because other teams have made moves and other teams are being rumored with more moves. Seattle's been pretty quiet, and if you're worried about Atlanta having enough players to field a team, you might need to look at Seattle's roster, your defending MLS Cup champions. Take a look and let me know how that's going to work out, because I have far more questions about Seattle than any of the other major contenders in the league. With Gressel, I don't know. There's no way to know. It was said by Bocanegra that he is expected to be in training on Monday. I have not heard anything from Julian Gressel about potentially holding out. That's been speculation from people that he might hold out. I don't think he has made a direct statement on it. If he has, I missed it. And if he has, please share it. But he's under contract. He's under contract. He's going into the final year of his contract because his option was picked up. I don't know. I don't know how it works out. I think there's going to be room to sign him. And I think they're also going to have options. So you don't have to sign him to a bad deal. You've got depth. You've got other options. But I don't think there's any reason why the club would not want to sign him to a new deal if it makes sense for them. That's the thing about this. Because the player wants one thing doesn't mean that the club wants the same thing in terms of a salary amount, in terms of length of contract, what have you. Sometimes they align, sometimes they don't. And sometimes people on the outside think they align when they actually don't. So let's see how it plays out. But he's expected to be there on Monday because he's under contract.
And also involving the Anton Walks discussion. Of course, now it disappeared on me, but Caleb Wright had a comment. He says he's super excited to see Walks coming back to Atlanta United. Looking forward to seeing how he's going to be used with the rest of the team under Frank de Boer.
I think it's depth. I think it's opportunity too. Just as it was said about Nielsen, you're going to be in training camp and you're going to have the opportunity to impress. And maybe Anton Walks has added elements to his game from what we saw in 2017. Maybe he's 22 now and he's played about 100 first-team matches. When he came to Atlanta, I think he had just a couple of first-team matches under his belt from his time at Tottenham. So you're talking about a different player, maturity-wise, maturity as a soccer player. 22 years old versus 20, also difference in maturity just as a person. Those things all help. And you have to see what you have. I mean, Walks is a guy who came up through Tottenham. He's a guy who I think he's good on the ball. I think he's comfortable on the ball. I know a lot of people got hung up on his crossing as a right back. I don't think he was really asked to push forward as much in the Tata Martino system as a right back. It was more of staying at home and letting Greg Garza push forward more on the left side. Walks, when he did go forward, he got a couple goals for you, had a couple of assists. He's a player who can play in a number of spots because he's a good soccer player. You can't play as a holding midfielder if you're bad on the ball. And, this is a common trait of Atlanta United players. You have to be comfortable on the ball. Anton Walks is. I think that's going to serve him well, and now he'll get a chance to impress Frank de Boer.
We have a lot of other Freestyle Friday comments and components, and there actually is a freestyle that has been posted.
You seem really excited about this.
Fourcard Ahmed has posted a freestyle. I don't know if it's a haiku or not.
Do you know what a freestyle is, by the way?
Isn't it just basically where you're given a beat and you sit there and you drop a rhyme?
It's off the top of your head.
Yeah.
You can't type a freestyle. And Fourcard might have accurately turned a freestyle rhyme into his fingers to type it out. But without knowing, I don't know. You get into a freestyle contest and you start reciting like organized rhymes, people will hold that against you.
Yes. I remember 8 Mile.
Wow. Go ahead.
Well, do you want me to go ahead and drop this freestyle rhyme on everybody, or
Are you going to drop it in rhyme format? Are you going to try to
oh,
turn into Vanilla Ice over here? What are you doing?
oh no, I'm just going to straight read it.
Just read the tweet, please.
Trophies in the back, swords in the front. Let your feet stomp. 17s on the left, brag, stuff to death. Supporters on the right, wild for the night. My peoples, are you with me? Where you at? Hashtag Freestyle Friday with a winking emoji. But seriously, are we getting the Uruguayan?
I don't know if we're getting the Uruguayan. That's pretty good. I think it was made better by your interesting reading of that.
That's what we're here for.
Go ahead.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, something like that. The Uruguayan, I don't know. The only outlet that I saw specifically linking him to Atlanta United had 450 followers. I'm not buying that. Now, that player has been linked to MLS by reputable outlets, if I could speak. La Ovacion is one of those, but not specifically to Atlanta United. Maybe, and this happens, maybe the 450 follower outlet has inside information. Maybe they know something that nobody else does. I'm not buying an account that you could start this morning and get 450 followers for. You can't take that as, yes, that's happening. So let's wait and see. He'd be a great addition, as would, I think, the two Paraguayan players that have been linked as well. I like Mesa as well from Necaxa. All of those would be good additions. I don't think you're able to get all of them. I don't think you're going to get all of them. And I don't know which ones you're going to get. But that's silly season.
John Roper with the Flashback Friday. Continuing the conversation about owners possibly selling, what owners do y'all feel are likely to sell in the future?
Well, you look at the league and you look at owners that maybe have struggled to keep up spending-wise, or don't have the resources to keep up spending-wise. Like Colorado, for example. They could spend more. They're not bringing in very much, and that's a reality. I don't think Dick's Sporting Goods Park has worked out for them like they thought it would.
No.
That's a huge issue. I don't know if moving back downtown would be the right route either for them right now. It depends on what they want to spend, and that's down to a person who has the money to spend. It's the decision of what he wants to do. I would not be surprised if they sold. Wouldn't be surprised about that at all, because it doesn't seem to be a priority in Stan Kroenke's sports portfolio, which to a degree is understandable. I mean, his portfolio is pretty large and has bigger properties than the Colorado Rapids, period. I don't think that's unfair, do you?
No, not at all. I've viewed the Rapids as more of a line item than a lot of the other things. I mean, he has the Altitude Sports Network. He has the Associated Radio property. He has Pepsi Center, I believe, as a venue, and all the things that are in it. You have the Avalanche. You have the Nuggets. You have the Mammoth.
I don't think
then you have.
Let's talk about the big ones here.
Not just
what sport do the Mammoth play, by the way?
That's the National Lacrosse League, but still, it's just a property in a building.
Yeah, but the Rapids are a better property than the Mammoth. Come on.
Yeah. So okay.
What are the teams that are going to draw Stan Kroenke's attention away from the Colorado Rapids?
Arsenal.
Yes.
And it would be Arsenal and the Nuggets and the Avalanche.
Yeah, and all of those are going to get him before the Colorado Rapids. You forgot one, the LA Rams of the NFL.
The Rams in that new building that he's building.
Yeah, I was like, I had to double check. I was like, wait a minute, he left it out. Did something happen? I missed it.
No, I just forgot to mention the Rams in Kroenke World. And that's where
Yeah,
a
forget
lot of
Cronky
his
World.
assets are
Just
going these
the
days.
Rams, Arsenal are going to get more attention than the Rapids, the Nuggets, and the Avalanche. The Avalanche are one of the better performing NHL teams financially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I mean, I think
They are.
NHL versus MLS is not. It's not going to be NHL every time. It's not going to be
No.
NHL. I don't know if it's going to be NHL the majority of the time, but I think
No.
in Denver it is, and some
Yes.
of that's because the Avalanche are in a downtown arena and the Rapids are out in Commerce City.
And once again, that's, you're looking at a lot of teams that are gravitating back toward either building facilities downtown or moving back into downtown and taking the suburbs out of the equation completely. And this is something that's probably happened, in the last 10 years, where folks are moving back to downtown and away from complete and total suburban stadia.
I mean, in MLS, no, it's just starting to happen.
Well, no, I mean in general. I'm talking in you're
I don't
looking
know.
at folks who want to build arenas, and they're doing it in when Columbus, Ohio came online with the Blue Jackets. It was a downtown arena.
Well, I think what's happened with it is for most sports, the suburban arena was used as leverage. You always wanted to be downtown. I think everyone's wanted to be downtown. Some had to go to the suburbs, and it hasn't ultimately worked out for many of them who have. I think soccer was more willing to go to the suburbs and maybe thought it was more desirable, and it was incorrect. It hasn't truly been that. So the Rapids are one that I could see that happening with. I don't think Dallas will. I think Dallas knows exactly who they are and what they want to do, and you're talking about a family legacy, so I'm not expecting that. The Dynamo, I just don't know. I don't really get a great read for what their long-term plans are and what's going on. Maybe we'll get a better sense with Tab Ramos in charge and what happens with the Dynamo this season. You keep scrolling through alphabetically. I mean, Montreal, Joey Saputo's talked about losses and talked about things, but it's also a long history for the Montreal Impact, in that town and with Joey Saputo involved. I don't expect that to go away. I'm not expecting that. I don't think Robert Kraft is going to sell. I think he's shown a new energy and a new commitment to this.
Mm-hmm.
There's always talk about Red Bull selling, and it's been a lot of whispers and maybe, well, if this happens, they might want to do this. They're kind of a wild card in this because the New York franchise for them, it's not a moneymaker. It hasn't been as successful as some of the others. I think there's some reasons of their own doing for that, and we'll see if that changes. But could Red Bull sell? It's been mentioned before. I don't know if there was a whole lot of actual real smoke to it. We'll find out. Philadelphia would have to be one to put on that list.
Yeah.
They're not as well resourced as the others, although they have spent money. They've done it on the academy side. They're starting to bear fruit there. So it might not be something immediate, but could it happen? Yeah, it's a possibility. Orlando, it's come up, and I don't think it's come up in the way that maybe this question was asked, because the owners talked about basically wanting to get out of just the business and make, I think a new life in the nonprofit world.
Right.
And that's a whole different conversation. I think that's not a sale because they can't keep up. I think that's a sale that was maybe planned all along. And I don't think it would dramatically change what Orlando City is. I think having the stadium, having the NWSL team, you've got a lot of things in place that make that attractive to keep going in Orlando. You put a good team on the field, that fan base is back, that fan base is energized, you're in a good position. It's just about the quality on the field now. The rest of the league, San Jose would be one you might want to keep an eye on. Just, I think, ownership, resource level, it's not quite the same as the rest. The other teams in the league have owners with money that, some have chosen not to spend as much as others. Some are starting to spend more money. But I don't think there's any others that are at risk of being left behind in a big way.
For me, the list was Philadelphia, Colorado, Houston, and San Jose. And of course, in my mind, say Jeffrey Lurie wants to get the union from Jay Sugarman and move him into the link, then that would be an interesting bedfellow there. Same with Jed York if he was interested in San Jose. But yeah, for me, I've always viewed the Rapids as a line on Stan Kroenke's balance sheet. And as long as it's either break even or turning a couple of $1 million profit through TV deals and whatever, I mean, I would assume that he's happy with that particular asset. No, I don't think they're happy with the crowds out at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. And for me, Houston is the last one on my list, where I think that if there was some investment, I still think, and we've made this point on the show repeatedly, that they never recovered from the Owen Coyle era. But I think that if there was investment in the Dynamo, you put a product on the field, you bring people into the building, then I think that you're going to be doing better at BBVA Compass. And I think that, obviously, if we were to ask Glenn Davis about it, then I'm sure that he could have some better answers than I would. But those were the ones that were on my list, would be those four.
Houston, it's not just the on the field. They've had a good team on the field here in recent years. It's not just the on the field. The fan base hasn't come back from the Owen Coyle days, and the club hasn't done a good job of connecting to that fan base. And that's a problem, and it's something that they have to figure out. We'll see if Tab Ramos brings a new energy to it, and we'll see if maybe the conversations in Houston are a little different going forward. I hope so. They've had a good team that needed more support in the stands, but fans are not obligated to show up. Soccer fans are not obligated to show up. They have to be motivated to show up. And I don't think the Dynamo have done enough to motivate people to show up after missteps.
Yep.
Because it's one thing when you have a successful product on the field. When it becomes less successful immediately, people don't necessarily walk away. They don't leave at the first sign of something bad. Over a period of time, and that was even before the Coyle days. The Coyle days just put it over the top, that it was just bad soccer. The harder thing is to win people back. It's easier to lose them than to win them back. Mm-hmm. And the Dynamo have not made a good enough effort to win them back, and that's something they're going to have to start doing. It's a town that doesn't get a lot of support from their sports media for the Dynamo. That's why the James Harden buy-in was a big deal and got a lot of buzz. It's something that the team has to do a better job with, because they are not relevant in the sports conversation in Houston like they should be.
No.
And hopefully that changes here at some point, because until it does, you're going to be trying to attract a niche audience. And then the flip side for me is, even if you're struggling to get into the mainstream sports conversation, in a city like Houston, you should be absolutely dominant in the Latino community. Mm-hmm. And they're not. And I don't know why. I'm not in Houston, so I couldn't tell you. But the fact that you've had a team with good talent, exciting talent, Latino talent, that has not connected with that community, and you're getting some of the crowds that the Dynamo have had, something's not right. And it's something that the ownership's going to have to figure out if they want to get this right. I think they got the right hire in Tab Ramos to develop something for the long haul. So hopefully they've got the right people in place in the front office to develop that marketing and branding and community engagement for the long haul. I feel like that's the missing element with the Dynamo. Other cities have different issues. The Dynamo, it feels more like just a disconnect between the team and the city.
No, I think you're right. I think that there's a misfire there somewhere, and it's with all of this stuff that this franchise has that is promising when it comes to not only wins and losses, but reaching out to the community. And for whatever reason, it's not happening. For me, that's the disconnect, I think, is the best word to use here. There's something there that needs to be, and it's not. And I think that is the number one stumbling block for me for the Houston Dynamo is that disconnect and how to repair the damage that's been there, and they're not addressing it for whatever reason.
Yeah, and it's something they're going to have to start addressing and doing a much better job with. Hopefully they can. All right. We've got Freestyle Friday on the Twitters. That means you guys can ask, can take the conversation wherever you want to go. You can ask whatever you want. Please do so on Twitter at SoccerDown here. If you're listening to this later, if you're not listening live with us this morning, go ahead. Throw in the questions. We'll get to them this weekend on Twitter. We'll get to them on Monday with our variety of drops, because that's what Monday's show is going to look like. We'll definitely get to them by Tuesday's show. But any questions that are out there for you, please go ahead and throw them at us. A couple other bits of news before we wrap up the first hour. Some different things that came out yesterday around the SuperDraft. One of the more fascinating moments to me was Taylor Twellman on the draft coverage talking about a rumor that Minnesota United did not call Joe Hart's representatives back, that there was some communication issue. It was $1 million a year offer, reportedly, for him to come play in Minnesota. Later in the broadcast, he came back and said that Minnesota folks had said, no, we've been in conversations. We've been talking with Joe Hart's people. More information after the draft. Mark Watson, Minnesota's technical director, said Vito Mannone has been offered what he called an improved offer. Would have made him the highest paid goalkeeper in MLS. Mannone rejected it. Should Vito Mannone be the highest paid goalkeeper in MLS in your mind, John?
What's that number currently?
I don't have it in front of me. I mean, it doesn't matter what the number is. Is he the best goalkeeper in MLS?
One of, but not the. I mean, he definitely kept Minnesota United in a lot of matches last year, but I would think, and now I'm going to go back to my listing of teams here, I would think that Luis Robles would be in that conversation.
Luis Robles was just let go by a team and they let him walk.
Mm-hmm. Sean Johnson, I would say, should be in that conversation.
You think Robles is a better goalkeeper than Vito Mannone?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
Probably because of I'm trying to figure out how to phrase
not
it.
history. Today.
Today?
Well, that's
then today the answer would be no.
Deal today.
Yeah. So then the answer, I was taking everything into account. If you're looking at just today,
contracts. We're talking about contracts. It's not about everything. It's about signing a player to a contract today. They're going to offer him the highest paid goalkeeper contract in MLS. I don't think they should.
I think that Brad Gazan is definitely better than Vito Mannone.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So then, by nature,
goalkeepers better than Vito Mannone. That's the whole point. I don't think they should be offering him the highest paid goalkeeper contract in MLS. And if he rejects it,
that's on him.
Bye. Well,
yeah.
Of course, but bye. There's no point to continue conversations. How much higher are you going to go?
Yeah.
I think you're already overextending it. So Watson said that conversations with Mannone are ongoing, but the club is in discussions with, quote, secondary targets of very good quality. Now, Taylor Twellman tweeted this morning that Mannone said, and this is in quotes from Twellman's tweet, DP contract or I don't come back. Well, there's a couple of things that are weird about that. Anything over 530,000 can technically be a designated player contract. Doesn't matter. I don't know if he's implying that it needs to be more than the max TAM deal, which would be 1.53. And if they're paying him more than that, then no, they're crazy. They're crazy. I don't think there's any reason. This is twofold. One, I don't think Minone is the best goalkeeper in the league. And I don't think you need to pay him as such. Two, I think you need to be very careful about paying goalkeepers exorbitant salaries. Goalkeepers who are producing for you on TAM deals, absolutely. It's a very important role. But we've seen what the Tim Howard deal did for Colorado. Not much. Now, once you decide to have them as a designated player, the cap hit is the cap hit. You can pay him $10 million a year. You can pay him $1 million a year. Same cap hit. That's up to you to decide, so it doesn't affect others. But if you're in that TAM situation, or if you're just loaded down with GAM, but nobody's going to put that much GAM into a player. If you're in the TAM situation, remember, you can buy them down below that cap hit. So a player like Brad Gazan, for example, he's above that threshold. You're using TAM on him. You can buy his cap hit down to $300,000 to $250,000. If you decide to go designated player, it's that maximum number. It's $530,000. That's the cap hit. And in a cap league, you got to think about where you allocate money by position. Goalkeeper is one where I think you have more depth and more options than any other in this league. And I think if you're gonna commit to a big outlay of resources at goalkeeper, you better get it right.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can go cheaper and you can get the same type of production. And Minone, I thought, was great for Minnesota last year. But if you start signing guys to contracts based off what they did last year and the year before, and not at what they're going to do this year and the next year and the next year, you're going to get yourself in trouble. You're going to get yourself in big trouble and limit your opportunities. I don't think it's smart for Minnesota to put that much towards Vito Minone. Or Joe Hart, for that matter. And I think Joe Hart's a good goalkeeper. I think he's had some very weird situations here that have derailed his career. But I think he's a very good goalkeeper. I think he would be a very good goalkeeper in this league. You know, if he's in that $1 million a year situation, you're going to have to throw a lot of TAM at it, or GAM, to bring that down under the maximum threshold. If you've got it to spend, then it's a little bit different conversation, and we don't know what Minnesota's sitting on in this regard. If they've got a bunch, okay, then maybe it's a little more comfortable for them to bring in a player spending that much. But if they were offering Minone more than that, I just don't think it's the smartest move.
I would think that you could spend those resources on getting folks who could put the ball in the back of the net, you know?
Well, yeah, but okay. These are two different conversations.
I'm just saying that you could take the money that Vito Minone wants, spend it more wisely than throwing all those resources at a goalie when you have a lot of goalkeepers in the league that I think are, well, not a lot, but a handful of keepers who I think are better than Vito Minone, Hamid, Johnson, Gazan, Tim Melia, Stefan Fry. So that already puts him number 6 on my list. So I would think that you could take those resources, bring in someone Joe Hart-ish, not Vito Minone, with the money that he thinks he deserves or wants in that contract, and then spend it on other things to help you get back to where you were in the playoffs last year.
But it's not one instead of the other. And we're going to hold that thought. We'll carry it over to the second hour because it's a very important discussion point when you look at MLS rosters. And you look at Minnesota specifically from 19 going into 20. you need to have a good goalkeeper and you need to have a number 9.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other. And we'll get into why that's the case in just a minute. Hang out with us. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, SDH, January 10th. The Friday before training camp starts for a few MLS teams anyway, the teams that are playing in the 2020 CONCACAF Champions League. Atlanta United will kick things off on Monday. I'll be out there. Mike Conti will be out there. Knox Bardeen will be out there. Many of your Soccer Down Here all-star contributors will be out there, and we'll probably all be contributing things to each other's stuff because that's how these things go. So be on the lookout for lots of different bits of content on Monday. We won't have a normal show Monday morning, but we'll have things on the app, on our podcatchers. So make sure you're subscribed and following all of us on social media for the latest. I'm going to try to catch up with both media folks, and we're going to try to catch up with some different people there, depending on who all is available and how things shake out on Monday. It's going to be a fun day just to get back into the mix of a season. It's felt like a long off season. For a while, it was a needed break, especially after the 2018 off season that barely happened. This one started out, it's like, oh, great, a chance to breathe. And you had the MLS Cup, and you had all the expansion draft stuff immediately afterwards, so you had things. Then it got to a point where it's like, all right, just let's start, please, let's get going. Let's play games. Let's have games to talk about. Please, games to talk about, not silly season, please. We're almost there, but we'll have some more silly season to talk about too. Okay, let's carry over the discussion from hour 1. And we're talking about Minnesota specifically, but this is a general MLS thing that I wanted to get into. So John said you can't commit the resources to Vito Minone because you need somebody to put the ball in the back of the net. Now, a couple things about Minnesota specifically, and this is just how my mind works when I look at these teams and I start trying to figure out needs. So, first off, Minnesota under contract. Angelo Rodriguez is still under contract and coming back right now. Mason Toye under contract, coming back. Would expect that to stay. Darwin Quintero is in Houston. Now, Quintero was a designated player. He was making $1.75 million last year. Designated player spot open. That could go to a goalkeeper, which it probably shouldn't. That could go to a forward. But the reason why it's not either or and you can only invest in one spot is Angelo Rodriguez. And Rodriguez is a prime example here. He's on a TAM level deal. He was making, according to the MLS PA, guaranteed compensation of $667,000 and some change. Manone was making $594,000 and some change. So you've got some flexibility here in terms of this. Even if you can't get out of Angelo Rodriguez's deal, even if you're stuck, nobody wants to take him on, you can't get him off of your books, if he becomes the backup, that can happen. They've been chasing forward options, reportedly, out of South America. Luis Amarilla is still in the mix, it sounds like, although Colo-Colo has made an offer to him, but there's some chatter out of South America that maybe that wasn't as well received as originally thought. So if you bring in Amarilla on a designated player deal, he just becomes your starter up top. You still have the TAM type of allocation that you had for Vito Manone. You can go take that somewhere else. Now, this goes to the bigger CBA conversation, and Carlos Bocanegra was asked about it yesterday. Is Atlanta operating under the terms of the old CBA as they're looking for players? I believe Garth Lagerwey was asked something similar. And you kind of have to right now. So when you look at it, and I know I've talked about this with Atlanta United's roster, when you compare what the salaries looked like in 2019 and you carry that over to 2020, and I think it's safe to factor in a minimal increase in the cap because that happens every year anyway. You can start to project, okay, you can see a team like Minnesota, designated player spot open. You can go do what you want there because Quintero's off your books. Robin Laud, Jan Gregush, Osvaldo Alonso, all back. They're in TAM kind of levels. Angelo Rodriguez, same thing. Vito Manone, barely over the TAM threshold. He's not back right now. Okay, so you have that spot to work with. You have a designated player spot to work with. You look below that. You have a lot of big money deals that could help you out. Romario Ibarra is not back. He was right at the maximum threshold. So that opens up another opportunity here. You've got some ability to move pieces around. I think when it comes to Minnesota, what has shocked me the most, John, is it sounds like there's some kind of power struggle or change in who has the final say with Adrian Heath and Manny Lagos.
Yeah.
And nothing's getting done.
No.
Because, you want to yell about players coming in. Well, Minnesota's had none. And they lost Quintero. And they lost Miguel Ibarra and other guys who were out of contract, but they moved on from Quintero, and there's nothing in right now. So what's the holdup?
Yeah. And for me, once again, the larger question is, with teams heading into training camps, shouldn't things have happened before now with teams heading into training camp if you're going to be, looking to fill these absences? The answer
not
is
necessarily,
yes.
Because this is the difference between Atlanta and Minnesota from what I can tell.
Yeah.
And I guess Atlanta wasn't linked to rumors early enough in the process for comfort level for some, but they're linked to right now. We'll include the Uruguayan, even though that one's tenuous in my mind. 3 guys coming in right now that have been pretty significant conversation about them coming.
But you're hearing
Mesa
no
is
conversation
probably
about Minnesota.
No, there's nothing. There's Amaria, and that's it. And that's been dragging for a while. So it feels like if he does end up there, it's because others didn't come in with enough money or he didn't get the offer that he was hoping for. So there is some news out of Minnesota this morning, though. According to Jeff Reuter, Adrian Heath has signed a new contract with the club. 2 guaranteed seasons, so 2020, 2021, club option for 22. Last year was his best year. His assistant, Mark Watson, took over the technical director role. Looks like, according to Reuters sources, Sean McCauley, longtime Portland and Orlando City assistant, will come in as the lead assistant for Heath. Maybe this was part of the holdup. I don't know. Maybe they'll get some things happening now. Now, they've got time. They don't have CONCACAF to worry about. They've got time. And I think the idea that, of course, you would love to have every player in day one of training camp and be able to work for a month plus uninterrupted. The reality is that very rarely happens. So you can bring guys in, and especially depending on where you're recruiting from, you can bring guys in and they can hit the ground running a lot quicker. If you've done your scouting correctly, if you know, all right, this guy's coming from a team that plays in a similar way, this guy's coming from a team that we've had players come from before, we know they're very professional, we know they're going to fit in, those types of things help you a ton. If you're bringing in somebody from a league that plays a very different style, that doesn't travel, those kinds of things can make the adjustment to MLS very difficult. But if you do your homework, you can pick players that have a less of a transition effect, is the best way to put it. So we'll see. Minnesota, Amaria would be a good person to bring in. And if that moves Angelo Rodriguez to a backup role, cool. I wonder what it means for Mason Toye. I wonder if they throw him out on the wing to get him minutes, because I think he might be able to be a double-digit goal scorer in this league, a Jossie Zardes level player, a top goal scorer in MLS. But he's got to play. But is Minnesota in a spot where they can give him those minutes and compete right now? That's the tough thing for a team at that level, right in that 3, 4, 5, 6 role, where it's like you want to play your young guys, but you got to win. And can you weather the mistakes that a young guy is going to make right now?
So then let me ask you a philosophical question.
Okay.
How much more concern should I have if I were a follower / fan of a team if you're not having any players mentioned short of, say, one in the Amaria case, where you're not in any conversations as you're heading toward training camp, as opposed to having conversations, being involved in player connections and contacts and rumors and gossip and innuendo? How much more of a difference should there be in my level of concern if you're not even being talked about being linked to players as opposed to being linked to players?
There's no one answer for that. It depends on your team. Minnesota is returning a good bit of their core, but you're missing your most impactful player in Darwin Quintero.
Mm-hmm.
You're missing a goalkeeper right now, and you didn't have enough production up top. That was something that you needed to solve. So with big needs and no real conversation, that's worrisome. And this is why I change it over to Atlanta United, and I think the worry that has bordered on outrage at times is too much. Because coming off of 2019, what were the big needs for this team? I don't think there was an obvious one as the 2019 season ended. Like, you've got to go fix this. You've got to fix this now. It wasn't like Minnesota, who didn't have anybody to score goals.
It was depth and reinforcements toward the back.
No, not now. Talking at the end of the 2019 season, as you watch the 2019 season play out, depth wasn't an issue. Team had plenty of depth, and it worked out. Now, once you started to see, all right, guys are not coming back, contracts are not getting renewed, okay, that changes the conversation a bit. But if you go into a game tomorrow, and we've done this exercise, and I think there's a few questions that lead us to this. If you go into a game tomorrow as this roster is currently constructed, and this is assuming Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez is not coming back. It's assuming it. That deal has not been done. Bocanegra said it yesterday. It's not finalized. Now, a lot of people made a lot of one comment that Bocanegra said, and I think people might be twisting it just a bit. He said that if LGP was training with Tijuana, that would be news to him. We've seen the picture with Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez in a Tijuana shirt. We've seen a hype video of signings that Tijuana has not announced yet, and there's a lot of speculation that Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez is one of those. There's been no video of him actually training. There's a difference in somebody being in a place and taking picture with shirts and being in a video without showing their face and actually training. That's where you start getting into contract situations. And that's something that what Bocanegra said is definitely revolving around contracts and what's allowed and what's not. Now, nothing's finalized. Don't know when it's going to get finalized. Tijuana plays this weekend. Let me actually pull up when they play. I don't think they're in the games tonight, but maybe they are. This is Club Tijuana, and they're not always the most organized in getting things done. They play at 10 o'clock. Laguna. They play Santos Laguna tonight. So maybe they're going to be able to rush some paperwork through for registration if he's going to play today. I don't know, but let's go through the Atlanta United roster right now, assuming that he doesn't come back. Let's just assume that he's not coming back. All right. Left back today, George Bello. Goalkeeper, Brad Guzan. Center backs today, I'm trying to think which way I would go with this. I think if I was going to do the lineup, I would actually go into at least 3 center backs. I don't know if it's going to be a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 yet. So Bello as a left wing back, Robinson, Lorenowitz, Escobar as my 3 center backs. You could put Walks into that conversation. And let's put Julian Gressel as the right wing back. Midfield, with what we have today, I like having a dedicated 6. That's just my personal preference. Mo Adams in that mix would be somebody I'd like to have. If we go 3-4-3 with the 3 center backs, Robinson, Lorenowitz, Escobar, Bello is a wing back on the left, Gressel is a wing back on the right, that would mean 2 central midfielders. You can go 2 of 3, Adams, Remedi, Heinemann. Comfortable with whatever combination of that works best. And then your 3 up top would be Barco, Pitti, Joseph. So let's say it's 3-4-3. Let's go there for now. That means in reserve roles, and I'll go Heinemann, Remedi for now in the midfield. So that means you've got Adams as a reserve, you've got Lennon as a reserve, you've got a reserve goalkeeper, you've got Luis Fernando as a reserve, Tito Villalba as a reserve, Andrew Carlton as a reserve, and Walks as a reserve. That's your lineup today. Is that really as scary as some people would try to lead you to believe?
Nope.
It's not. Is it ideal? It's not bad. You can get better. And I think that's the idea. But that's in a 3-4-3 setup. You can play a 3-5-2 very easily and just move Barco or Pitti in as a number 10. Let's say you're forced into playing a 4-3-3. You'd probably go today Bello, Robinson, Lorenowitz, Lennon. You would go with Heinemann, Remetti, Pitti, or Barco. I like Barco better in that role, but I think Frank prefers Pitti as a 10. The other one's going to be on one wing. Gressel's going to be on the right wing. Joseph is going to be your forward. You've got lots of options to field a strong lineup. Now, depth, yes, there's still work to do. But it's not as catastrophic as you think. Let's look at Minnesota right now. So let's look at what the Loons would field today. Goalkeeper would be Dane St. Clair. I don't think they have actually signed Greg Ranjit Singh yet. I think they have his rights, but they haven't done a deal with him yet. So Dane St. Clair, because there's nobody else. I know you're probably looking up Dane St. Clair right now because he hasn't factored in at the MLS level. You would have... He's probably going to play a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. So Chase Gasper on the left, Opara and Boxall in the middle, Metanire on the right. Two holding midfielders, Alonso and Gregush. It'd be more than likely Robin Lod on the left, Ethan Finley on the right. Kevin Molino would replace Darwin Quintero, which isn't bad. Molino's had injuries. Can he get back to where he was before? I don't think he's quite Darwin Quintero, but he can be very effective. And then you're back to Angelo Rodriguez or Mason Toy up top, which was the same problem you had last year. You weren't getting consistent production out of either one. So the lineup itself is okay. Molino replacing Quintero, question. Goalkeeper, giant question. And you haven't answered the question you had last year about who scores goals. Now let's move that over to Seattle. You're defending champions right now. You're pulling a lot of guys into different positions at the moment because it's thin. It's real thin. You're probably going with Stephen Fry. Well, Stephen Fry in goal for sure. You're probably going Jovan Jones as a left back as opposed to a left winger. Xavier Arriaga as one of your center backs, and you're going to have to pull Gustav Svensson back there to pair with him. Kelvin Leerdam at right back. That means your holding midfield today would be Christian Roldan and Jordy Dellum or Danny Leyva if you want to play the teenager. Your left winger, you would probably throw Harry Shipp into that role now. They've just re-signed him. Jordan Morris on the right, Nico Ladero as your number 10, Raul Ruidiaz up top. The front part's great. Not a lot of depth behind that front line, but okay. Defensively, right now, you're pulling your holding midfielder who was really good for you to the back line. You're moving your left winger, who was pretty good for you in that role too, to the back line. More questions with some different teams in this league, and we'll have to see how they answer them. It's going to be interesting.
We have questions on the Freestyle Friday.
Okay.
Chris Ashley starting it off, and there are some that are kind of all in the same vein.
Yeah.
But Chris wanted to know, and he admits it's kind of early in asking this kind of questions, but he thinks he wants to know who is going to have the better year, Nashville or Miami.
I think Miami will. I don't think we know exactly what Miami's going to look like just yet, but I would expect that they'll have some higher profile players in the attacking end of the field than what they have currently and what Nashville will field. I think right now Nashville is more stable. I think Nashville has a higher floor as currently constructed for sure, and maybe even in general. But I think they have a much lower ceiling. I think Nashville will be competitive. I think they'll be a much better version of an expansion team than Cincinnati was. I think they'll be better than Minnesota was. I don't think they'll leak goals like either one of them. But I don't know how much top-end game-winning talent they have. And that's going to be the question for them. Now, the way that could change a little bit if Hani Mukhtar comes in and lives up to the hype. Just it's hard to project. I don't know. If Randall Leal shows that he's a top young Costa Rican winger and comes in and is effective, okay. If you get good performances on the back line out of a veteran in Brian Bekeles and a young player in Miguel Nazarit, that could elevate you. You have Dave Romney, you have Jalil Anibaba, you have Ken Tribbett, you have solid players there. But if Bekeles can give you a good year or two, and Nazarit can give you good performances, maybe they're a little bit better than we think. I just don't know if Nashville is a team that I would say, yeah, they can make the playoffs. I think Miami is a team that we expect to be able to say that about.
Yeah.
Now, they still have work to do. Right now, no. I'm not placing that bet. But if they do the things that they've said, then it's going to be a different conversation. Now, Paul McDonough spoke yesterday during the draft. These are the quotes from him. We have significant international players still to sign. We have an international winger that we've got agreed. We're doing personal terms with. We have a DP striker that we've agreed with the club, trying to see if we can get personal terms done. We have midfielders we're trying to secure and 1 or 2 center backs. He hoped that all those deals are going to be done ASAP, conceded that 1 or 2 might come in after the opener on March 1st. Particularly with the 2 remaining designated players, though, McDonough has said this and he's still holding to it. He's intent on acquiring them now, not waiting to the summer. Now. He said with the major tournaments like Copa America and the Euros, if you wait to sign a DP in the summer, the impact he can have would be very minimal. So that would lead you to think he's talking about a national team level talent with a top South American country or a top European country, because he doesn't want to sign somebody, have them go play in the competition, and then come to you in like August. He said the goal for us is to try and fill now, to come out of the gates and be successful from day one. Now, let's see who it is. Let's see who these guys are. But when you hear that, and you look at the roster and you look at where these players could fit and you look at the names that have been linked, Miami should be better than Nashville. But you have to put should in italics until, and with the caveat that maybe some of these deals don't get done until after opening day. You have to put that down at least until opening day. You have to put should in italics at least until opening day.
Chris said, at the moment, I actually feel better about Nashville in terms of where they currently stand and being in the West.
I don't know if being in the West is a good thing for them, but where they currently stand, yeah, they're more stable. They have a solid group. They just don't have a spectacular group.
Thomas Gwynn wanted to know if he could have 2 top questions.
I said 1. Man, Thomas, all right.
1, will Atlanta United be able to field 11 players against Nashville?
Nope, cancel the season. They're gonna forfeit.
2, will LGP play for Cholos tonight and there still be no announcement? I kid.
Sure, why not? He'll play under a different name.
Be Neandro Monzalez Shirez.
That was terrible.
I was trying quickly.
Awful.
Keaton Thomas wants to know how we feel about Frank DeBoer going into year number 2, and do you think he'll take what he learned last year in terms of changing his playing philosophy and applying that to this year, or do you think he'll go back and do more of what he wants to do? # Unite and Conquer.
Why is there this idea out there that Frank DeBoer and what he wants to do is so rigid? I don't understand it. I don't get it. I really don't get it. And I know it's out there, and I know some of it comes from comments that were made in London about Crystal Palace, and some of them come from his time at Inter. I don't know. Some of it comes from people who've just been down on the Frank de Boer hire from day one. I don't think it's very fair, to be honest, at all. I think you have to give him a lot of credit for making the best of last season, because he had a lot of challenges. Forget the sniping and griping and stylistic questions. He had injuries to deal with from literally day one.
Mm-hmm.
Day one of training, Franco Escobar, broken collarbone. He's out. Frank had told Mike Conti and I, as we're talking to him, we're introduced to him, we're just talking about preferences and things he likes and style he likes, and he talked about 4-3-3, which is a typical way to come at it from a Dutch perspective. Well, and Frank said this many times, he didn't have a right back with Franco Escobar out. And that means he did not consider Julian Gressel an option at right back. Now, he has 3 options at right back. Franco Escobar, Brooks Lennon, Anton Walks. He has options at left back, George Bello. And according to the things Carlos Bocanegra said, it sounds like one of the additions is going to be a left back who's going to give George Bello competition. Bocanegra talked about that. I think if you start to try to connect dots, you would think that it's probably going to be Arzamendia from Paraguay. Okay. That means you're going to have at least 2 options at left back, along with Walks, who's played a lot of left back for Portsmouth, along with Lennon, who's played a little bit of left back for Real Salt Lake. So you've got those options. If things go haywire, you've got more options this year. Okay. So he had to deal with injuries last year. That meant instead of playing 4-3-3, he went to 3-4-3. It didn't work. 3-4-3 was a shape that not many players in Atlanta United's roster had experience with. It showed. It didn't flow comfortably. But I go back to that time as well, and I look at when things weren't working and you had to make adjustments. He made them. And I think his substitutions, he tried to find ways to solve issues in matches. The Philadelphia game, rescuing a point in March, was a big one. He started to shift out of the 3-4-3, go to more of a 4-4-2 at times, a 4-3-3 at times, and that's where he got to with Escobar returning. You saw the second half against Monterrey. He really started to push things a little bit more tactically. Okay. The second half of the second leg when you were chasing that against Monterrey. All right. 4-3-3 worked really well. You went on a long winning streak, long unbeaten streak. Still weren't scoring a ton of goals. Still weren't creating the number of chances you wanted to, but you were in a much better position as you were getting better and better as the year went on. Then you had to shift to 3-5-2 due to injury and suspension because you did not have outside backs. You didn't have any. Breck Shea, knee injury. George Bello, still recovering from surgery. Franco Escobar, suspended. You go into the Houston match, you play 3-5-2. Justin Merrim turns into a wingback, and you make it work. And that helps unlock the offense a little bit more, and you start to create more chances. That also makes you more vulnerable defensively, which was something that Frank de Boer wanted to avoid. Tata Martino wanted to avoid the year before because he talked about it all throughout 2018. You wanted to be better defensively. So for de Boer to come in and want to make the team better defensively, that's not craziness. That was what Martino worked towards in 2018 and ultimately made the decision that we can't be better defensively in the way we're playing. We have to turn into a counter team in the playoffs, which is still one of the most impressive shifts of the way a team plays that I've ever seen. Because you're in the highest stakes matches of your season and you're changing your personality almost 180. And it worked. And that's a credit to Tata Martino. It's a credit to the players. Last year, it's a credit to Frank DeBoer, and it's a credit to the players to be able to make those adjustments, have the third best record in MLS in the season, get to a final, get to a semifinal in the playoffs, and win 2 finals. Campeones Cup, fine, it's one game. You can call it what you want. You lifted a trophy at the end of the day, and you beat Club America from Mexico. Pretty good night. You won the Open Cup. I think it's unfair to talk about, well, Frank DeBoer, now he wants to play his way. Frank DeBoer wants to win. He wants to win games. I don't think he really cares at the end of the day how he wins games. I don't think he's as rigid tactically as some people would try to lead you to believe. He didn't show that last year at all. He didn't stick with the 4-3-3 when he wasn't comfortable with his outside backs. He didn't stick with the 3-4-3 when it wasn't working well enough. He didn't stick with the 4-3-3 after he had injuries that would have made it really difficult. He adjusted. That's a credit to him. That's a credit to the players for being able to make the adjustments as well. It's not either or. And I know why people look at it as either or, because there were comments made. Leandro Gonzalez-Perez, Pity Martinez made comments publicly. I get it. They made adjustments. DeBoer made adjustments. Some needed to be made. Some were forced upon them. And they had a good year. Why would you want to scupper that and just say, well, I'm going to go back to the way I want to play? Which, if anybody can tell me, please fill me in, because I've watched Frank DeBoer's teams at Ajax. They were not rigid. I think a lot of the rigid thing is coming from Crystal Palace, where it's a different situation, and it's not fair to compare it, because Frank DeBoer was brought to Crystal Palace to change the way they play. That was in the job description. So if you're going in and you're told, I want to change the way this team plays, I want you to build the new way this team plays, aren't you going to be more rigid in trying to get it to take hold? It's not rocket science in that. You have a different description of your responsibilities at Crystal Palace than you did here. Here it's win. Here, it's continue to build what has already started. Win. He's done that. Crystal Palace, it was to change who that club was. They didn't want to be the club that was fighting relegation every year. They wanted to have a style that was more continental, that had more depth to it. Not just sit, defend, be safe defensively, play direct. They didn't want to do that anymore. Well, ultimately, they got scared and they went back to it. But that was not his job description in London, to just win. It was to change things. He had to be more rigid because he had to try to change it. The fact that the club asked him to do one thing and then said that he wasn't doing something else well enough, either they weren't clear, or the things that were said in the media about what they wanted from Frank DeBoer were not true. Atlanta was a whole different situation, and I think the flexibility he showed was very important. I don't know what they go in with the idea to play, and this is something we've talked about with the players who have been rumored and the players who have been brought in. You've got a lot of versatility in this team now. It'll be much easier to go and change those formations. Look at Pep Guardiola at Bayern Munich, at Manchester City. Pep is a manager who likes to change the shape based off what the opposition's going to present, both to protect and to exploit weaknesses. You want to be able to change from a 3-4-3 to a 4-3-3 to a 3-5-2 as needed. It's hard to do year one. Atlanta did it pretty well. Year two, it's a lot easier. Yes, you're adding some new faces, but you also know some of the things you needed to add. I don't think it's about Frank DeBoer going back to the way he wants to play, because I don't think there's this rigid set of bullet points about the way he wants to play. That's where I'm at with it. I really liked Frank's perspective on the game. I liked the comments he said after matches, because I liked the way he kind of thought about the match. Was he at times blunt about it? Yeah, he was. That's the nature, and that's the background he's coming from, and that's how these things are handled in other countries. Could he have been a little more political at times? Sure. But then people would have complained about that, because they always do. Whenever, John, you can speak to this, whenever you interview a coach after a game and they don't say anything, people get mad.
Yeah.
Frank said stuff. He was very clear in what he saw and how he felt about it, and I liked that. I liked the way he saw it. I loved the adjustments he made in games, substitutions that he made that won points for this team. I was really impressed with both him and the players' ability to adjust as the year went on. I would expect that to be a hallmark of this team in 2020, and I would expect it to be a better team than it was in 2019, because you're in year 2 with the manager, and everybody knows one another better. Yes, new players are going to be brought in to fit, but they know what they're fitting into now.
Mm-hmm.
That's important.
Nathan P. wants to know if Orlando will ever make the playoffs.
Yes. I don't know if it's this year, but they will in the next 2 years. I'll take that to the bank.
Ricky Ricardo, what teams that made the playoffs last year do you see not making it this year, and vice versa?
Okay. So, wasn't there another question similar to this? Let's go ahead and combine them.
Yeah, Shiva was about to ask the same question in a different way. Which team that did not make the playoffs will make it in 2020 East and West?
Okay. So, who falls out and who jumps in, basically, is where we're at, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So, let's look at what it was last year. And we will work from the West to the East, and we will work from the bottom to the top. So, West, 7 was Dallas, 6 was Portland, 5 was LA, 4 was Minnesota, 3 was RSL, 2 was Seattle, 1 was LAFC. The one that is at most risk of falling out of the playoffs today on January 10th.
Minnesota?
Well, right now, yeah. I don't think they go into the season with Dane St. Clair as their goalkeeper. I think they're going to get a forward. Although the goalkeeper one's the bigger issue for me at the moment, just because you don't really have anything to fall back on. Today, yeah, they would be. I think maybe long-term, I don't see Real Salt Lake finishing 3rd.
Yeah.
I don't see the Galaxy finishing 5th. I think they'll be higher than that. I think Portland has potential to be higher than that.
Right.
I'd say it's Minnesota and Dallas and Salt Lake that are in Minnesota, RSL. No, Minnesota, Dallas, RSL. In that order are the 3 most likely to fall out.
Sporting
most
in. Sporting in.
Let me get there. Most likely to get in. Sporting would be number 1. San Jose would be number 2. And it's a toss-up with Colorado and Houston. I think both have work to do, and it's too hard to put them into that right now. Sporting would be the number 1 for me that gets in. San Jose would be the second one.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, in the East, counting backwards, it was New England 7, Red Bulls 6, DC 5, Toronto 4, Philadelphia 3, Atlanta 2, NYC 1. Most at risk of falling out right now, Red Bulls 1,
yep.
DC 2, Philadelphia 3 as currently constructed.
Yeah.
Best opportunity to get in, number 1, Columbus, number 2, Orlando, and that's it right now.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at right now, January 10th.
Yeah, I agree with those assessments. Along the same lines when we were having our discussion about the drafts and other sports. Ricky Ricardo says the NBA draft lottery is a joke.
Ooh, why?
Don't know. He just said the NBA draft lottery is a joke. End of sentence.
He might subscribe to black helicopter theories. I know you do.
Of course. Frozen envelopes. It's not black
no,
helicopters
no
in the NBA.
envelopes
It's frozen envelopes in the NBA, no black
Is
helicopters.
Is it envelopes or is it ping pong balls?
I think one leads to the other.
Well, I think the envelopes are after the thing's already been done because they do the thing behind the scenes, I think.
Yeah. And then they open the envelopes and give you your draft order with all of the, when Jamie Gertz sits there representing the Atlanta Hawks and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be why people think it's a joke. I'm going to believe that they don't do it that way, but I'm also the glass half full person in this show.
Yes.
Maybe in this sport sometimes. Man, everybody gets negative about everything. I think in the NBA, the draft lottery has had more good than bad because there's a big difference between the NFL and the NBA in the decision to tank. The NBA, if you decide to tank, if you say, you know what, we are going to be awful this year, let's play for the number one draft pick.
And your best player just gets injured.
No, that's not the point. That has nothing to do with this. I'm talking about the decision to tank from day one. The NBA doesn't want teams to tank. Why? Because that's going to affect 41 games of revenue at home, and more importantly, 41 games of revenue on the road, and also TV matchups that are stupid. Because people don't want to watch a team tank.
Nope.
The NFL, it's a lot harder to tank. Borderline impossible. Shorter season. Playoffs open up a lot of opportunities. I think there's more opportunity for a last team to get in the door in the playoffs to win the Super Bowl than the last number 8 seed in the NBA playoffs to win the finals. So much. I think it's happened in the Super Bowl, and I don't think it's ever happened to even get to the finals in the NBA as an 8 seed. So
nope, happened Stanley Cup.
It's harder to tank in the NFL, so you don't have to have the lottery process. The NBA, you want the lottery process so teams don't just tank their way to the number one draft pick. They might try to do it and then have it blow up in their face. So I'm not against the lottery process in the NBA. I think it makes sense.
A couple of folks had comments about the presentation of the SuperDraft yesterday.
Okay.
Shiva said, hey, at least we presented with class. Love the trophies in the back and the professional setting at the round table. Thumbs up emoji.
No, the look from Atlanta was really good with the War Room camera. Seattle brought their trophies out too, which, I mean, you got to do it. You got the bling. You got to bring the bling out. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Some of the different teams and their War Room cameras were interesting. Some didn't look all that great. I think they cut to Ali Curtis in Toronto, and they were all laughing about something. I don't know what. It's it's part of the presentation. It's part of the branding of the different teams and what you want to portray to people, which, again, is something you can do in this way of doing the draft that you couldn't really do before.
Tofka enjoyed the way it was conducted this year, but I'm ready for the draft to move to the USL. If a player is a potential MLS caliber, then let an MLS club pay a minor transfer fee for him. I'd be more excited to watch Charleston Battery pick a difference maker.
I don't know what you do with the draft long term, to be honest. I don't know how you can improve it. I don't know if there's a way to make it more important. I mean, the college game in soccer is what it is. And I don't think it becomes a bigger part of player recruitment in the future. I think it becomes a smaller part. So, if you're going to continue with it, this is the best way to do it, in my opinion. Have fun with it. You don't need to bring everybody together to do it. Do it like this. I mean, isn't the baseball one like literally conference calls?
Yeah, because MLB Network is in years past. They've all done the big conference room thing, but
Baseball did? I thought they did conference call.
Yeah, well, I think it's evolved to conference call now. But in the past, you had the big war room down in Orlando at Disney's Wide World of Sports, and MLB was there, and then they had Studio 42. But I think it has just gone back to conference call.
Yeah, I think it went back because I know in the past it was conference call. I think MLB Network probably tried to make something of it and realized that there wasn't anything to it.
Kefsey liked that MLS tried something else, that they brought in ESPN, and loved that Nashville made a bigger splash than Time Warp Bex. Thoughts on what Twellman and Doyle thought was funny about the shine in Atlanta's draft room? Shade? Perceived trolling? It looked smart to me, too.
Who knows? I mean, it's difficult for a Twellman and a Doyle in that situation. Adrian Healy's just trying to keep things moving along, and he's running point. But, Twellman and Doyle have to be entertaining with a process in this draft that is not the most entertaining. Again, it's players who are probably not going to change the fortunes of the teams they're being picked to in 2020. They've got to be informative. And I thought it was funny with Doyle, especially early on. Like he had put a ton of work into this, and he was trying to drop a lot of knowledge, and it's just like there's no point. It's tough. I mean, and then when you're trying to fill time and you're trying to be entertaining, it's very easy to be snippy or snide or throw shade or whatever. That's an easy thing to do in that. Everybody who does anything live, like it devolves to that at times, and it's just. It happens. I don't know if it was planned shade or not. It didn't really even register with me, honestly. So it's what it is. I thought it looked good. I mean, I thought it fit what Atlanta has portrayed themselves as. I thought it fit the Atlanta United brand. It's something they've done before with these types of events, and it looked good.
Also on the board this morning, let's see. Okay, Jeremy York and the folks at Impact on the Freestyle Friday. As a Hammers fan, would love to see Chicharito in MLS, and I agree this only works if he plays more. If he's the next big mover from the EPL to MLS, is there another that may even be an under-the-radar choice from the Premier League that MLS teams are targeting? Happy Friday, guys.
I don't know who's being targeted. I mean, again, there's no way to know this stuff. Like I could throw 10 names at you and try to sound smart. I could do that. Could completely make it up. And
Jack Grealish.
No, that's not realistic though. Like if you're going to make something up like that, if you want to have credibility, it has to have some element of being realistic. Jack Grealish shouldn't come into MLS. Come on now. Ashley Young, but it looks like he's going.
He's heading to Italy.
He's going to Italy when his contract's up. But that would be a type of player that, okay. But no, I'm not going to do that. Could there be more? Sure. Will there be more in future years? Yep, I think so. This year, there hasn't really been a ton of others linked. I don't know if anything emerges out of thin air unless it's a domino effect of a Premier League team brings somebody in that makes a player expendable. I don't think there's anybody who has been targeted and being chased right now. There is an update when it comes to Chicharito. This is from Tom Marshall, ESPN FC, covers Liga MX and the Mexican national team. It's at Mexico World Cup on Twitter. Chicharito is aware of the Galaxy rumors and, quote, for the first time, unquote, is interested in a move to MLS. This is coming from Sergio Dip, who's part of the ESPN network. Sevilla hasn't given him any guarantees over playing time in the second half of the season. He wants to be playing regularly. He would. At LA with the Galaxy, he would. So Chicharito takes over the number 9 shirt from Zlatan. That's pretty big. The chance to have the crosstown rivalry with Mr. Vela, that's really big. So if Sevilla's saying, look, we're not going to guarantee you playing time in the second half, that changes the conversation here. I think it's possible. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Chicharito is lined up with the Galaxy on opening day.
James McClatchy, re-LGP, he loved Carlos's Sergeant Schultz imitation yesterday. I know nothing, I see nothing, end quote.
But you have to. And that's something that I hope people understand when it comes to this stuff. When you have players under contract and when you have these types of negotiations, you can't drop hints. You can't be throwing things around willy-nilly. That's why when people get mad about Atlanta United not either making rumors or creating rumors or talking about rumors, you can't. You can't.
It's a tampering charge. Yeah.
Well, no, this is not American sports where everybody's under the same umbrella. It's not tampering to talk about your own player like LGP. It's just not professional. He's Atlanta United's player until he isn't.
Right.
And you're not going to talk about a deal that might be in the process of being worked on, that might be all but signed. You're not going to talk about it until it's done.
Yep.
And I'm sorry if that frustrates people, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, because publicly you're not going to sit there and go, well, we're going to take player X and we're going to deal him. You don't air that stuff out publicly.
Well, no, you don't do any of it, because if a deal falls through at the last minute, which happens all the time, because these moves are more complicated than just saying we're trading Jim Smith to Buffalo for Bob Jones. It's not that. This is a club paying a transfer fee to Atlanta United. This is a club, more than likely in most of these situations, signing the player to a new deal. Sometimes you see the transfer fee agreed to, and then the personal terms break down. The player wants a new deal from that club. They don't get it. They say, I'm not going. Then the transfer falls apart. Sometimes it goes the other way. The club talks to the player, talks to the player's representative. They have a contract worked out, but they can't get the transfer fee nailed down. Sometimes the transfer fees are complicated because you get into sell-on fees. You get into all these other things going on. You can't talk about these deals until they're done officially. We can talk about it. Media can talk about it. Fans can talk about it. But when you get frustrated with somebody in the club who's doing the deal not talking about the deal, it's not very fair and it's not very realistic. We're getting lots of things pop off here at the end of the show. We'll get back to Twitter. 1 second. Taylor Twellman tweeting out a few minutes ago, great work by the Philadelphia Union front office to get Jamiro Montero done and signing him to a designated player deal. Smart transaction for a franchise that is on the up and up. So we're going to go back to a few minutes ago where I had Philadelphia, I think, third on my list of teams that might fall out of the playoffs. Take them off the list. They're off the list. It's Red Bulls number 1 and it's DC number 2 right now until deals get done with DC. Red Bulls, I don't know what deals they're doing because who knows.
Agreed. You want me to head back to Twitter?
Yes.
Okay. At the Elijah Willis, do we think we'll keep Tito since he's reporting to camp, or is there still a chance he's moved out before the season starts?
I don't know. I mean, he was one that I think most people thought would be on the market. He's been reported to have been on the market. Nothing's happened. There really hasn't been any rumors around it. So, I don't know.
Waka Tata Flame and Percy Herrera wanted us to spend an entire segment solely talking about the war room from yesterday.
What else is there to talk about it? I mean, it's a sweet room. It's you feel very important being in that room, that's for sure. It's awesome. Swag.
ATL, it is. ATL UTD fan number 1, based on what Boca said yesterday's LGP expected at camp on Monday.
He wasn't asked about that specifically. I don't know. I mean, he's under contract today, although there's a really confusing article in AS that I'm reading right now from Rodrigo Serrano. I don't know if there's a translation issue here. There's a difference. Now Serrano's reporting says that just when everyone thought that Leandro Gonzalez-Perez was on his way to Xolos for the upcoming semester, Atlanta United registered the Argentine defender for the MLS season. And I don't know if they're confused by the option being picked up or what. And I don't know if they're confused with rules in Liga MX that aren't necessarily the same, because the rosters in MLS are not finalized. You're not roster compliant yet, which still allows you to make moves anyway. So I don't know if there's just confusion in terminology and confusion in the way different leagues operate. It's kind of strange. I mean, it has the quote that Felipe Cardenas tweeted out, nothing is finalized with Leandro. I don't know. It's set now in NAS, and this doesn't really make a lot of sense. It doesn't say anything about Bocanegra went ahead and registered the player. Like, he didn't say anything about that yesterday. I don't know why Serrano is putting things in that term. He said, and this is Serrano saying, Perez had even been training with Xolos when this happened, but will now have to return to Atlanta because they deny any sort of agreement was reached. I have no idea. This is a very confusing thing when there's also a quote that I would like to see why or where this came from that Thomas Jawin dropped on the timeline. Yeah. Tijuana's athletic director, Ignacio Palu, said yesterday, and it's quoted, Thomas quotes it, I have not seen where this is from. Please share it if you've seen it. It says, the case of Gonzalez Perez is with us. It is signed. Surely tomorrow will be enabled. That's coming from Tijuana's athletic director yesterday. I'm guessing he had a media availability yesterday. I don't know what outlet has that quote. That doesn't seem to fit with anything that the Serrano article in AS says, which I really don't know where that's coming from. Welcome to silly season. This is how things happen. You're talking about languages. You're talking about language barriers. You're talking about translations. You're talking about differences in rules between the leagues. Liga MX has some crazy rules too. Not as many as MLS, but they have some rules. They have some things that get in the way that make things complicated. You're talking about international transfers. You're talking about a lot of stuff, and things can get very confusing in the midst of it.
Also on the board this morning, since you took up a lot of the LGP stuff, Tafka, we need to give a huge shout out to the fact that our president has such a close and wonderful relationship with the fans that he control his own fan base and be applauded for it. Haha.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very light troll. It was kind of funny.
No, I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it was not that big of a deal.
Kefsi, what do you make of renewed EMLS? Atlanta signs a new player. Nashville outpaced Philly for its champ. Jay Ajayi blanked as his replacement. I don't think it's meaningless. So many players worldwide and a growing element of the league and game, no?
Yeah, it's not a world that I live in. It's not a world I know, but it's obviously important, and there's obviously interest in it. The Philadelphia thing is craziness, where their player got recruited away by Nashville. They went out and got Jay Ajayi, former Philadelphia Eagles running back, which is cool. Got a ton of hype. Jonathan Tannenwald talked about the interest in that. Well, then Jay Ajayi just got worked yesterday in the first round, but because it's in Philadelphia, because he was the host city's player, he goes automatically into the quarterfinals where he might get worked again. Atlanta United's new signing, 16-year-old Brazilian, he made it into the quarterfinals, and Katie Griggs talked about this yesterday about how this is a strategy for the team. They went out and recruited a top young player who was here in one of the FIFA worldwide events and recruited him to join Atlanta United and become Atlanta United's EMLS player. And so far, so good. Performances have been good. So it's a big deal. It's not something I know much about. I mean, I can't tell you much about it, but there's obviously teams looking at it and seeing value in it. It strengthens a brand. It might introduce the brand to new potential fans, new potential consumers, customers. And that's always something that any club in the world is going to look for. A lot of clubs around the world are starting to get into the esports deal. So, and with a game like FIFA and how, big it is worldwide, makes sense. So I think it's cool. I think it's really interesting. It's not something I know much about, but if it's another way to grow the brand, go for it. Do it.
Tofka, a full year and a new preseason under his belt is going to help the chemistry between Joseph Barco and PT. I'd say we were only hitting at 75% power last year. If that group starts to click, it's going to be absolutely insane to watch.
Yeah, and they were clicking pretty well at the end, and that's important. You got to remember Barco, with all the injuries, too, was in and out. And that was something Bocanegra mentioned yesterday, was he thought Barco, before he went to the U20 World Cup, was maybe Atlanta's best player. I would agree. I thought he was outstanding in the first part of the season. Went to the U20 World Cup and was great for Argentina, and then got whacked in the knee in the Open Cup game in Columbus, and he struggled to get back to full fitness for quite a while. And he battled through it, and I thought he contributed in some big ways late, but he wasn't 100%. And hopefully he'll get there and be that player that we saw early in the season for a longer period of time in 2020.
Mikey at Lamont Michael wants to know, any idea where that circle table for the Super Draft was? MBS training ground?
No, it's at the family office. It's at Arthur Blank's, the AMB office. I'm pretty sure. I'm about 100% sure. I know it's not at the stadium. I don't think it's at the training ground. I'm just about sure that it's at the family office.
Thomas linked to the original tweet from Heriberto Munoz, who has a little over 1,000 followers on his account. And he says that there are other reporters with other versions of the same statement.
Okay. Then, I would assume that it's a legit statement. I wasn't questioning the legitimacy of it. I just didn't know the context and where it came from. It makes sense. I mean, we've seen these things play out before. I don't know what the holdup is. I don't really buy the AS article at all. That doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't seem to fit anything that's been said. But, has something slowed this process down? It seems that way. And is Scholes going to be able to get it done tonight to play him tonight? Well, I'm sure they'd like to. And I don't know if they can do that.
A couple of other things before we're caught up on the Twitters. A link to something out of MLS Buzz where the president of the Mexican Soccer Federation, Jan de Lucia, told the media yesterday he's pushing for a Continental Cup made of clubs from CONMEBOL and CONCACAF. It wouldn't replace CONCACAF Champions League or Libertadores, but would be separate. His quote, "In December, we had a CONCACAF council. We're working hand-in-hand with CONCACAF President Montaliani to have a Continental Cup, and when the Cup is achieved, it will be easier to return to Copa Libertadores. It would take this over League's Cup every single day." And so Ricky Ricardo says this would be nuts in capital letters.
Yeah, I love it. I wonder what it would look like. I wonder if it's 4 teams, if it's, something that goes over a longer run. I don't think South American teams are going to want to add another long competition. Like, this would sound like something that would be at some point in the year, and there's not going to be an easy point to do it, where you bring these teams together and you do a group stage in a location. I don't know. I'm spitballing it because this is the first I've heard of it. Maybe you take the Libertadores winner, the Sudamericana winner, and 2 finalists from CONCACAF Champions League, and you play a round robin, and you do it in Vegas, and everybody makes a stupid amount of money. And that's a kickoff to expanding it further.
Yeah. Then the last tweet on the board that will catch us up comes from Tofka, and it's about EMLS. He says, Boca made a huge point. EMLS is the gateway for the very young FIFA fans. Having a top player for the competition exposes Atlanta to young soccer fans all over the world. Interesting change in the times and a good investment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a gateway. And if you can get people interested who play FIFA and they see Atlanta United and they're like, "Ooh, wait a minute, that looks cool. That's a cool brand. It's a cool badge. All right, I like it." Oh, and this guy is like one of the best players in the world, and he's the Atlanta United player in the MLS and in FIFA competitions. Yes, I'm going to support that team. Whatever it takes for Atlanta United to become somebody's team. You know, we've seen it with Newcastle fans because of Miguel Almiron, Portsmouth fans because I've talked to a few of them who have followed Atlanta United because Walks played here. It happens. Aberdeen fans now because of that connection. It definitely happens. And if FIFA and the video game side of it becomes another way for that to happen, makes total sense.
I'm trying to think, is there anything else news-wise that we haven't talked about before we put a bow on a show?
Keep an eye on everything when it comes to Leandro Gonzalez Pires today. I'm sure this is going to continue ahead of Xolos' match tonight. Some other rumors that are out there quickly. We mentioned the one Uruguayan player who the very small outlet linked to Atlanta United, Santiago Rodriguez. La Ovacion has reported Rodriguez and Matias Vina are both linked to MLS, not specifically teams. Both young, Rodriguez 20, Vina 22. Rodriguez attacking midfielder, Vina 22-year-old defender. Both are really breaking through. Vina's also been linked to Fenerbahce and Palmeiras, so those are out there. Boca outlets in Argentina are reporting that the Agustin Almendra discussions are continuing with Miami, deal getting close. He could be one of those designated players for Miami that they're trying to bring in. You remember Wilfred Bonney?
Yeah, Wilfred Bonney, yeah.
He is, according to an interview he had with The Athletic, had some interest from MLS. He said he's out of contract. His Swansea City contract expired in 2019. He had been loaned out to Al Arabi in Saudi Arabia. According to Bonnie, says, there was a Brazilian club called Porto Alegre. They just made an offer, and now my agent is talking to them. A lot of people are calling. We've got people from MLS and from Turkey. You never know where the best offer will come from.
Okay.
That's out there.
El Mataflow and the Colonel can chime in as well when it comes to Wilfred Bonney. I would say that his time, especially his latter sessions with Swansea, were marked with inconsistency. Sometimes he would be a world beater, and sometimes he would be just standing around and nothing would go right. So you're getting 50-50 with Bonney in his latter time with Swansea City.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a move that would be a little bit more of a desperation move.
Yeah, you're pushing for work right now. That's how I'm interpreting it.
Well, no, he definitely is. There's no question about that. But if you're an MLS team going to get him, I don't think he's going to solve all your problems.
No.
Could he be a player who's part of solving problems? Maybe more of a reserve, sometimes starter role? Yeah. That seems reasonable.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's going to come in and score 20 goals.
No.
Inbox, ESPN now has the rights to the Copa del Rey. All of those matches in the deal are going to be on ESPN Plus as they continue to take over the world.
What do they not have?
Well, they're getting the Bundesliga. They don't have La Liga. They don't have South American stuff. They don't have ESPN Plus doesn't have anything with Mexico.
Yeah.
ESPN Deportes does, and some of that stuff gets streamed. Probably outside of Spain, because that's the obvious one. The next biggest league in the world that they don't have is probably Brazil. And nobody in the U.S. has Brazil.
Yeah.
You've got the other leagues in South America, like Argentina, Colombia would probably be the next two that they would be interested in. And, I mean, Spain would be really the biggest one. Other European ones, Portugal is still with Goal TV. Turkey is with BN. I mean, if you're going below that, you're getting into Russia, you're getting into, Eastern Europe. Because they've got the Netherlands, they've got Sweden, they've got Belgium, Scotland would be on the list. There's not a whole lot out. There's not a whole lot left for them to get.
Yeah, and I guess the way that I was asking the question is, what assets are out there that would be worthy of getting picked up that would help you with your saturation of
Brazil's
the sport?
The biggest one that I feel like they could get quickly. La Liga just re-upped with BN, so that one's going to be a minute, and that's the biggest one that they don't have. Brazil, Portugal, Argentina, Colombia would be how I would rank the ones that they... Turkey compared to Argentina and Colombia is really tough. I think for ESPN Plus, it would be a whole lot smarter for them to get the Latin American ones as opposed to Turkey. I think the audience would be bigger.
Yeah.
So that's where I would go. They don't really have a lot on the Plus that would draw Spanish speakers in.
And that, to me, that's your place.
Well, it's becoming that, yeah. And I mean, they have Deportes, and they have their own Spanish language outlet, so it's a different conversation than others, but there's not a lot on Plus that if you are a Latin soccer fan and Spanish first language, that you have to have ESPN Plus.
Yeah.
Copa del Rey helps with that regard. La Liga will help with that, but then Argentina and Colombia would probably be the next two leagues that you'd be looking for.
Yeah, that's so. All right. ESPN Plus. Now that you got Copa del Rey, what's next? And if you don't have it, and that and Fanatis, that's your PSA for the day. Plus and Fanatis.
Yep, that's where it stands right now. That's all the rumors. That's all the stuff. Oh, one more. Sorry, Christian Dahome. He is a winger who is at Independiente del Valle. According to Nico Moreno of the Pulso Sports Network in Seattle, deal is done for Dahome to come to Vancouver. 26-year-old winger, mostly on the left side. He was on loan at Independiente del Valle from Atlético Nacional in his native Colombia. 4 goals in 11 Copa Sudamericana appearances. He had a goal in the final. They won it. That's a good addition for Vancouver if they get that one done.
Yeah, and in my buzzing past a lot of stuff, I vaguely remember watching bits and pieces of that match. So, yeah, that's when you have a certain package available with your cable provider, I end up watching those matches as well.
Yep, and we can congratulate one of our longtime listeners, Daniel Price, daughter born this morning at 7:09.
Nice.
So congrats to Daniel. I know a lot of you guys have tweeted at him at Daniel Price ATL. Throw a little congratulations his way on Twitter.
Congratulations on the addition of the new number 6.
Well, don't pencil into shapes yet. It's very young. You don't know what the personality on the field's going to look like. Could be a goal scorer, could be a goalkeeper. You don't want to be too rigid with formations, John.
True.
Got to let the players figure these things out sometimes.
Yes. So we'll let Daniel's newest addition to the roster figure out what they want to be going forward.
Yes. And have fun with silly season today. I'm sure it's going to get sillier when it comes to Tijuana and Leandro Gonzalez Perez and Atlanta United and the whole deal, because it's that time of year. We'll see what happens.
10:10 kickoff Eastern time with Santos Laguna.
Yeah, we'll see what happens tonight. Thanks, everybody, for being part of the show this week. Thanks for tweeting at us. So many questions, so many different comments. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be back next week. Monday will not be a normal SDH programming day. There will be stuff, but it will be in bits and pieces and things. So stay tuned to the app, to social media. Stay tuned to us at 92.9 The Game as well, because we're going to have a lot of things that will be dropping for you on Monday and then throughout next week that we'll be working on Monday. Day one of training. Going to be a lot to talk about, it seems like. It's going to be fun. Thanks for being part of it. Mucha plata, y'all.
Much plot, you.